Right now, you are thinking, and you are aware of those thoughts. Somewhere in the back of your mind, a voice keeps repeating things you wish it would stop saying. Maybe it is telling you that you failed, that you are not enough, that tomorrow will probably go wrong too. You have tried to silence it. You have tried positive affirmations, journaling, and breathing exercises, and still it comes back. Here is what nobody told you. You have been trying to fix the wrong thing. Your brain is not broken. It is doing exactly what it was designed to do. The problem is that it was designed for a world that no longer exists. 40,000 years ago, your ancestor crouched in the dark. Every sound was a potential predator. Every shadow was a potential threat. The brain that kept that ancestor alive was not an optimistic brain. It was a suspicious one, a paranoid one, a brain that defaulted to the worst-case scenario because the worst-case scenario was always just seconds away. That brain survived. It had children. Those children survived. And eventually, after tens of thousands of years of this brutal filtering process, you were born with that same brain. In a world of Wi-Fi and grocery stores and Netflix, you are still running ancient threat detection software. Neuroscientists call this negativity bias, the tendency of your brain to register, respond to, and remember negative experiences more powerfully than positive ones. Rick Hanson, a neuropsychologist at UC Berkeley and author of Hardwiring Happiness, puts it plainly. The brain is like Velcro for negative experiences and Teflon for positive ones. A single bad moment sticks. A dozen good ones slide right off. This is not a personality flaw. This is architecture. But here's where it gets interesting. Because for most of human history, people assumed the brain you were born with was the brain you were stuck with. If you were an anxious person, you stayed anxious. If your default was dark, it stayed dark. Science agreed. Textbooks said neurons were fixed. The adult brain was finished. Done. Hardwired. Then came the discovery that changed everything. In the 1990s, researchers began documenting something extraordinary. The brain was not fixed at all. It was plastic. Not plastic like a water bottle, but plastic like clay. Capable of being reshaped by experience. Capable of growing new connections and pruning old ones. Capable of physically changing its own structure in response to what you repeatedly think and do. They called it neuroplasticity, and it rewrote the entire story of what you are capable of becoming. Michael Merzenich, a neuroscientist at the University of California, San Francisco, spent decades studying how the brain reorganizes itself. His work showed that mental training could physically alter the brain's cortical maps, not metaphorically, not spiritually, literally. The neurons that fired together, wired together, new habits of thought created new neural pathways. Old pathways that, when unused, began to weaken. The brain, it turned out, was always under construction. So the question becomes, if the brain can change, why is yours still stuck in the same loops? Because of how you have been trying to change it. Most people approach negative thoughts the way you might approach a fire. You see it. You panic. You try to smother it. You pour water on it. You back away. And all of that frantic activity, all of that fighting and fleeing and forcing actually adds fuel. Here is why. Every time you engage with a thought, whether to attack it or suppress it or argue with it, you are activating the neural pathway that thought lives on. You are lighting it up. You are strengthening the very circuit you are trying to shut down. Psychologists call this ironic process theory. It was studied extensively by Daniel Wegner, a Harvard psychologist, in the late 1980s. His famous white bear experiment asked participants to think about anything except a white bear. The result was that the white bear became impossible to avoid. The harder you try not to think something, the more your brain thinks it. Suppression does not work. Resistance does not work. Not because you are weak, but because that is not how the brain rewires. So what does work? The answer is something that sounds far too simple to be true. But the neuroscience behind it is overwhelming. You rewire your brain by changing what you repeatedly pay attention to, not by fighting your thoughts, not by forcing positivity, not by toxic optimism or faking a smile, by slowly, consistently, deliberately redirecting where your attention lands and then staying there long enough for something to actually grow. Donald Hebb, a Canadian neuropsychologist, first articulated the principle in 1949. Neurons that fire together wire together. It sounds abstract, but here's what it means practically. Every time you notice something good, a small satisfaction, a moment of beauty, a thing that went right today, and you hold your attention on it for 10 to 20 seconds instead of immediately moving on, you're doing something physical. You are sending a signal down a neural pathway. And if you do it again tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that, that pathway gets deeper. It gets faster. It starts to compete with the old pathways. This is not wishful thinking. This is cellular biology. Rick Hanson calls this practice taking in the good, not pretending bad things do not happen, not denying the darkness, but deliberately harvesting the small positive signals your brain would otherwise discard, and giving them enough time to actually write themselves into your nervous system. Here is the part most self-help books skip. 30 days is not a magic number. It is not that the brain is suddenly rewired after 1 month and everything is fine. What 30 days does is something more honest and more powerful. It is enough time to establish a habit of attention, to build the muscle, to get past the resistance, through the discomfort, and into the point where the new pattern starts to feel less foreign. Neuroscientists studying habit formation, including work published by Philippa Lally and colleagues at University College London, found that behavioral automaticity, the point where something stops feeling effortful, took on average 66 days in real-world conditions. But the momentum begins in the first 30, and it does not require hours a day. The research consistently points to brief, frequent repetition as more effective than long, occasional sessions. 5 minutes 3 times a day beats 50 minutes once a week. The brain learns by repetition, not by duration. What does this look like in practice? It looks like this. You have a negative thought. Instead of fighting it, you notice it. You name it. You say silently or aloud, "There is that thought again." You do not believe it. You do not argue with it. You simply observe it the way you would observe weather passing through. And then you gently redirect your attention to something real, something in the room, something in your body, something that is actually happening right now rather than in the imagined catastrophe your brain is building. Neuroscientists who study mindfulness-based stress reduction, a program developed by John Kabat-Zinn at the University of Massachusetts, have used brain imaging to show that this kind of attention training, practiced consistently over weeks, literally changes the physical structure of the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for emotional regulation, for perspective, for the ability to pause before reacting. It gets thicker, more connected, more able to put the brakes on the amygdala, the ancient alarm system firing off those threat signals your ancestor needed in the dark. You cannot turn off the alarm. It is too deep, too old, too wired in, but you can build a brain that responds to it differently. Here is what nobody warns you about. It will feel wrong at first. The old pathways are comfortable. They are fast. They are familiar. The new ones are slow and awkward and feel like pretending. That discomfort is not a sign you are failing. It is a sign you are doing it exactly right. Every new habit feels like wearing shoes on the wrong feet until suddenly it does not anymore. Your ancestors survived because their brains were paranoid, because the alarm never fully turned off, because they noticed every threat in every shadow. That same instinct is in you right now, searching for something to worry about in a world where the predators are mostly imaginary. You inherited a survival machine. You are not its prisoner. The brain that kept your ancestors alive in the dark is the same brain that can learn something new right now in the light. It just needs a different kind of training. one that does not fight the darkness, one that slowly, patiently, cell by cell, teaches itself to look for the light. And you can start in the next 30 seconds because your brain is listening to everything you do right now.